So in The Flash Season 5 Episode 4 Newsflash, we finally learned what issue Nora had with Iris, and it was a pretty good one that until 6 months ago, Nora didn't even know she had speed because Iris placed a speed dampening chip inside her. So in a recent video, I went over who possibly told Nora that she actually had speed, but in today's video, let's discuss the reasons as to why Iris would ever do such a thing to her daughter. How's it going, everybody? My name is BobaTalks and welcome to a brand new Flash video. And since there is no Flash this week, let's go over a few possible reasons and theories as to why Iris didn't allow Nora to have speed her whole life. Something that even in the present day, Iris herself couldn't comprehend doing in the future. Now, first things first, I think we need to start with the fact that Iris has been through a lot with Barry. I mean, she has thought him dead on many occasions and sometimes believed it more so than others. For example, you know, how he was away for quite a while from the end of season 3 to season 4. Bottom line being that a member of Team Flash, let alone the wife of a speedster, isn't without its major risks, especially if you're thinking about having a happy family with speedster children one day without anything going wrong. I'm saying this because it's kinda important to remember this for a bit of background context for later on in this video. So with our current season going back to the basic plan of, you know, reintroducing the 2024 article storyline into full swing, Team Flash has now learned from Nora, who traveled back in time to be with her father, that he never came back after he went missing in a crisis in 2024. So I pretty much think that you get the drift that I'm going with here. After Nora and Barry told Team Flash of this article a few episodes back, Iris seemed to think that all would be well in the future despite seeing the 2049 article, which reflects upon the 2024 article, explaining how after 25 years, the Flash still isn't back. Despite everything pointing towards Barry going missing seeming to be quite a solid thing in the timeline, Iris still is like, well, you know, we've changed the future once, we can do it again. And to me, that does sound in one way logical because yes, they have. They prevented Iris from dying at the hands of S.T.A.R, and even those changes were made in that very article with Iris's name. But I think the fact that Iris is just leaving it to when the time comes kind of attitude is a bit of wishful thinking. So in Nora's timeline, the more or less usual timeline where Barry does go missing in crisis in the year 2024, after Iris perhaps comes to terms with the harsh reality of Barry going missing after multiple months thinking that he might come back like he did at the beginning of season 4, or after multiple attempts from Cisco and Team Flash using their genius thinking and technical inventions, there still assumingly was never any luck with bringing Barry back. So this may indeed drive Iris to think, who at this time by the way would have already had Nora, since Nora did point out when she was explaining all of this to Barry for the first time in the time vault that she was born a few years before when he went missing. Iris might just be like, oh crap, I can't let anything happen to my only remaining family or, you know, piece of Barry. So what if Nora follows in the footsteps of her father and something happens to her too? Shouldn't she have a normal life without the consistent burden of being a speedster and the weight it carries? So she goes ahead and puts the speed dampening chip in Nora, and thus she grows up without ever learning until recently that she has had the speed force just like her father her whole entire life. But, you know, her mother stopped that. And for the record, I totally get both sides of this particular argument. Whether there is a risk of being a speedster or not, whether that's just being a continuous target of Eobard Thawne who might try and F with you because you're related to Barry Allen, or just having those powers and feeling the compulsion of saving Central City, thus putting yourself in danger, taking away something that is a part of someone is pretty messed up, especially when that is their decision. As Nora points out, that is essentially controlling someone who has now missed out on multiple years of honing her powers as a speedster and feeling different for years, as Nora pointed out, when she knew there was something that wasn't quite right. But either way, guys, you can attribute elements of this stuff to what I'm still yet to talk about. Now, this theory I've gone over definitely is the most simple and straightforward reasoning for why this could have all happened. But let's throw a few more spanners in the works. There are some some theories out there of people suggesting other interesting reasons to ponder, like such as Barry himself might even be the one to suggest putting a speed dampening chip within Nora, and in the future when Nora confronts Iris about her speed and the dampening chip from, whoever told Nora about this, which is a total mystery within itself, she then goes on to have a fairly large falling out with Iris, who was only perhaps protecting and preserving Barry's memory for Nora, who would only look up to her father as the Flash, and thus Iris taking the fall for putting the chip within Nora. Now, I quite like this idea because it would kind of be a twist on it all, and there's absolutely no way, as of now anyway, on the show, anyone would know anything about it, since obviously Barry and Iris are younger versions of themselves. Nora could be mistakenly convinced that her mother in the future did this to her when in fact it wasn't, and she wouldn't know any better. But then again, why would Barry do this? Well, if you think of the actual almost real life instance of this happening, it could be as straightforward as you don't want a speedster baby running around, who could be completely unpredictable as you could imagine. Sure, you could say her metagenes of being a speedster might not become apparent until she's older anyway, but for argument's sake, let's continue with this one for a minute. Sure, Nora didn't know how to phase as of episode 1, but I'm guessing a speedster baby could do all kinds of unpredictable things when upset or agitated. I mean, imagine Speed Force crawling. The possibilities are completely endless. I mean, even literally a time traveling baby, but yeah, I guess that's kind of not achievable through crawling. But all jokes aside for a minute, that is actually one possibility that Barry, or even Barry and Iris could, make the collective decision of making together before he goes missing in Crisis, and even could have planned to have let her have her speed when she was old enough and responsible enough perhaps. But this kind of ties into a previous theory as well, of when Barry does then go missing in Crisis, Iris might then make the decision to keep the chip in, despite the decision to, let her have her speed when she perhaps becomes a teenager, for all the reasons I've mentioned before this. Iris might be too afraid of the fact that she might ultimately end up losing Nora as well. Then of course you have the theory of the anti-metahuman act being a thing in the future, and although I don't think that this will be the case at all during the year of 2024 or even a few years after, and I believe that Mark Guggenheim has even commented that there have been no plans to visit that kind of setting within the Arrowverse for real on our shows, this story and theory as to why Iris takes away Nora's speed is familiar to the comic book storyline that Nora, as you could say, is very loosely based on. I say this because in the comics Barry and Iris have twins, the Tornado Twins, and the time that they are raised in is a time of where metahuman abilities are more or less, completely unwelcome. Hence Don and Dawn Allen having the hero names of the Tornado Twins because they have to disguise themselves by spinning very, very fast with their Speed Force abilities, which then resembles two tornadoes. So essentially here you could argue that after the events of 2024 and this iteration of the Flash TV show, they could somewhat implement a metahuman ban in Central City and possibly change it up a bit from the comics, but as I said, I really completely highly doubt that this is the exact case for as to why Iris did this in the future. Now, adding even further onto the theories I've mentioned, whether you keep in the baby speedster element or not, or whether Barry also made this decision alongside Iris, and that Iris kept the decision to keep the dampening chip within Nora after Barry went missing in 2024. There is ultimately the possibility that she made this decision because she fears that Nora would make the potential worst decision of all, which, she kind of already has, which is traveling back in time to prevent her father from ever going missing in Crisis, and thus messing with the timeline and creating incomprehensible changes, which of course Iris and Team Flash would know more about than anyone, compared to a naive, reckless kid who just wants to see her father equipped with the incredibly powerful ability to change time itself. Now, of course, guys, this theory is a very, very likely one too, because the reasonings that Iris may have here are extremely logical. That is, not messing with the timeline and creating certain things like Nora kind of already has, like freaking cicada, which we know on the show already is a result of the trajectory of the satellite having been changed when Nora punched it, thus creating a different cicada to that of David Hirsch, who would have actually become cicada in the original timeline. I'm sure as much as Iris wants to change the timeline herself, possibly in this theory, she just knows that the risks aren't worth it, and Barry wouldn't want that for himself anyway, or their family. But either way, guys, at the bottom line, for some reason or another, in Nora's timeline, in that timeline where Barry goes missing, they couldn't prevent it. Sure, you could just say, oh, but Boba, they didn't know it was going to happen. Well, I argue against that, because no matter what timeline, they've always kind of had this 2024 article in the time vault knowing that Barry would go missing. My problem with that has always been like, have they always just thought that it would come back the week after next or something like that? So either way, bottom line, they didn't prevent it from happening in Nora's timeline, knowing ever since season 1 or Wellsabard or whatever have you, that the 2024 Flash going missing in Crisis would happen. This is where it gets a bit timey-wimey too, because you have to now think for a moment, if Nora has traveled back in time and told them about this, and they're now going to attempt to possibly change it, did this always happen in the first place? In the timeline where Iris puts the speed dampening chip in Nora, had she already met an older version of Nora beforehand, like she is right now this season? Or is this technically the first time it happens, but even still, then you have the whole... this is literally where my brain starts hurting and it feels like I'm looking right into the soul of the Speed Force. So now, will the decision for Nora to have the speed dampening chip in the future, with whatever theory you may choose coupled in, now be because she knows that she does it in the future anyway? So now Iris may do it as to not create some weird kind of paradox, or will the events of this season with Nora coming back in time end up screwing with multiple things, and as a result end up perhaps erasing this version of Nora we're seeing this season on screen from existence? That is, if they do in fact prevent the crisis of 2024 and Nora grows up with Barry, which would indeed create an entirely different version of Nora, still arguably somewhat similar of course, but you get my point there. She would still be living the first 20 something years of her life very differently with her father, where in the timeline before she didn't, thus erasing our Nora. Yep, you kind of get it. Either way guys, there definitely are a few reasons as to why Iris could take away Nora's speed in the future, and I'm sure you have quite a few ideas and opinions on what I've listed on already in this video, and perhaps could provide some really unique reasonings behind this mystery yourself. So be sure to let me know them down in the comments below. That is a video. If you did enjoy it, be sure to take a second to just click that like button, as it really does help this video out. If you want to see more videos just like this, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you can never miss out on a single Flash theory video, review, trailer breakdown, you name it. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you guys have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll see you speedsters in the next video. Goodbye.